It's Ramsey Dewey over here in Shanghai, China. Welcome to another edition of Q&A with the Coach. First, a shout out to the channel sponsor, xmartial.com. Go check them out for some awesome martial arts training equipment, included but not limited to awesome rash guards. More about them at the end of this segment. Now, under the questions. Today, our question comes from VM Suhas. He's actually sent in a series of questions. He says, I never learned grappling or any form of martial arts. I just started MMA directly. How do I compare myself with other grapplers who are, say, black belt in this or that style? How do I show my rank or experience when there is no belt system in MMA? And are MMA fighters allowed in grappling tournaments? Or do we have a separate group of people to compete against? Well, that last question's the simplest to answer. Are MMA fighters allowed in grappling tournaments? Yes, absolutely. Different grappling organizations have different requisites and stipulations. For example, the IBJJF, the International Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu Federation, which is the most widespread, probably most popular jiu-jitsu competition organizer out there, has the following stipulation about professional MMA fighters. Professional MMA fighters may not compete as white belts. They must compete at blue belt or above. Also, judo black belts may not compete as white belts in BJJ under the IBJJF, and American college wrestlers may not compete as white belts. So, again, on that list, professional MMA fighters, judo black belts, and American collegiate wrestlers may not compete as white belts. Now, those are the only stipulations I know of in any particular grappling organization. Some grappling organizations simply ask you to rate yourself. Are you beginner? Are you intermediate? Are you advanced? Some require that you have a belt given to you by somebody in the club, if you will, somebody within that organization, and some simply don't care. So always check the rules. This is a very important rule if you want to win. Check the rules. I cannot stress that enough. I'm giving you some secret knowledge here. If you want to win at combat sports, or really any sport, know the rules. Know how the game is scored. If you don't know that, you're probably going to lose, or at least you're not going to win consistently. But if you understand the rules inside and out, your chances of winning go way, way up. Because at that point you understand how to win and build your strategy around that. So you asked a bunch of other questions, or really just one layered question before that. So you went straight into grappling without learning, say, from a Brazilian jiu-jitsu school or a judo school or whatnot. So you don't have a belt, you don't have a rank, and you're wondering, how do I rank myself? And this is a question a lot of people are concerned about, because we want to know where we fit in the pecking order, in the hierarchical structure. Because we are social animals, and social animals, humans like wolves and lizards and all these other animals that have certain hierarchies, want to know where we fit. Right? Your question made me think of something that I think is really important to discuss. Rank is not the important thing to discuss. How do you show your rank or your experience? You get on the mat with people and you grapple with them, and then you will learn very quickly what the holes in your game are, what your strengths and weaknesses are, how your experience matches up with them. It's very easy. Grappling it's a simulated fight to the death, but nobody has to die. So you can test that quickly and easily and safely without serious injuries. So it's quite possibly the world's most pragmatic form of fighting, grappling. Because you can do it and all you lose is a bit of pride, but you gain a whole lot in exchange. But grappling for MMA, this is fascinating. I've had a bunch of personal discussions with this, but I don't know if I've talked about it on this channel. The idea that becoming a good MMA grappler, if you will, which is a weird term because MMA isn't just grappling. It's this whole unique sport that involves, well, all aspects of fighting. It is the sport of fighting. But when we learn grappling exclusively for mixed martial arts, and from mixed martial arts, I should say, and then we go to, say, a Brazilian jiu-jitsu gym, and they're grappling in the gi, and they're using all these radically different techniques that never come into play in mixed martial arts, like a cross-collar grip and all these different controls with the sleeve and the lapel and the pant leg and, you know, the stuff that just doesn't exist. And they've got these anchor points and they've got these frames and it can be very confusing, and you're going to feel like, I thought I was good at grappling, and now the white belts are just ragdolling me because I don't understand grip fighting. What's going on? So we create kind of a lopsided skill set. Regardless of what type of grappler we are, we generally have a lopsided skill set in contrast with other grappling disciplines. And so if you're a very experienced MMA fighter and you have a ton of experience grappling from mixed martial arts, that's a very important distinction than grappling for mixed martial arts. Grappling for mixed martial arts it's a hokey name for a class they'll run at your gym to try to sell more memberships. But grappling from mixed martial arts, that's your actual experience in the cage grappling with real live people. In a cage, in the context of them trying to hurt you. So, yeah, you may find, if you're a very experienced grappler in that context, then you might feel, and you might seem, and you might actually be like, let's say, a black belt level in certain techniques in certain situations. And then you change the rules, and you change the structure, and you change the experiences. For example, introduce the gi, take out the strikes, change the rules, no more leg locks or whatever, and suddenly your game is crippled. And the other guy has all kinds of advantages, and you have all kinds of disadvantages. And then you might feel like, oh man, I'm back to square one. Or you go from being a really good wrestler from wrestling in mixed martial arts to wrestling an actual wrestler. And suddenly the setups are different. The scenario is different. The rules are different. Everything's different. And suddenly it's like, oh man, you suck at wrestling. Well, not really. You just suck at wrestling in that different context. So it's weird, man. It's weird. In the world we live in right now, people generally associate mixed martial arts with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And so there's this idea that you must be good at Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in order to be good at MMA. And well, there's definitely tons of crossover between Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and mixed martial arts. There are many, many techniques and strategies which you can use in either sport. At the same time, they're whole different animals, man. They really, really are. But we expect MMA fighters, MMA coaches, MMA culture to also be part of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu culture and vice versa. And so there's this idea that unless you excel in this importantly different sport of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, with the gi, with those grips in that context, with those setups and those strategies that will win you IBJJF tournaments, for example. Unless you excel at that importantly different sport, you will not be respected as much in the sport of mixed martial arts as somebody who does. Weird, right? Is any other sport like that? I don't know. Not one I can really think of. If you think about it, are there any... I mean, think about it. Football, baseball, basketball, boxing, like any other combat sport. Boxing. Kickboxing, for example. Okay, boxing is in the name of kickboxing. But is there any kickboxer professional kickboxer out there, a professional kickboxing coach, professional kickboxing culture in general. Is there anybody who is shunned or poo-pooed for not being a professional boxer or having professional boxing experience? That wasn't my experience when I did professional kickboxing. I did a number of different professional combat sports, American kickboxing, K1 rules kickboxing, Sanda, Muay Thai, and mixed martial arts, MMA. And boxing is a sport I only competed in as an amateur. I've trained professional boxers. I coach some boxing classes. I love the sport of boxing. It's something I've invested a lot of time into. But, coming up in the tradition of American kickboxing, it wasn't really something anybody talked about. Like, what's your boxing pedigree? You don't really belong in this circle of kickboxers unless you have a boxing pedigree. No, that wasn't talked about. It just simply wasn't. It was basically, how good is your kickboxing? Even though I think everybody kind of understood that if you're a better boxer, that can transversely make you a better kickboxer. And generally speaking, the best kickboxers are the guys who work on their boxing as well, but not instead of kickboxing. And that's a very important distinction. I think if I put out a poll, and I thought about it before making this video, but I decided, meh, I've been putting out so many polls. Everybody's been putting out so many polls on YouTube since that one dude made that video about how if you put out polls, you'll get 1 billion subscribers or whatever. Nah. But they're fun. Polls are fun. But if I put out a poll saying something along the lines of, would you rather take MMA classes from a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt or a guy who is not a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, I think most people would pick, I want to learn from the black belt. That sounds more legit. I don't know what this other guy knows. I don't have any information about him, right? But we know for a fact that the black belt, he's a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and there's a lot we can learn about grappling that will cross over into mixed martial arts from that guy. Now what if I told you that the guy who was not the black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu was a trainer of world champions, of UFC fighters, of guys you've heard of guys you want to emulate and be like and fight like? And the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt has never stepped in the cage, never trained anybody who has? Well, that context makes it a little bit different, right? You want to know, who is this guy? Yeah, I want to train with that guy who's trained all the pro fighters. Yeah, forget this black belt. He's a bum. Right. Context is everything, man. Context is everything. I put out a series of polls, and I'm going to make another video about that, about a fictional tournament, a hypothetical tournament between martial arts YouTubers in the style of UFC 1. And one of the very simple stipulations was nobody on this poll had a professional fight record. Let me amend that, a professional MMA fight record, because there were some pro kickboxers, professional jiu-jitsu, etc. on there, professional boxers as well. But no pro MMA fighters were included, so notably absent, we had that MMA shredded guy, Chewy from Jiu-Jitsu. He's had a few pro fights back in the day. Myself, Wonderboy Thompson, not on the list, and everybody was saying, where are these guys? Where are these guys? But one of the reasons I put out that poll, and one of the points I'm going to make in this future video, is the fact that our experience belies our experience. Because in spite of the fact that none of these guys have professional MMA careers behind them, most of them have taught you valuable lessons about martial arts on YouTube. Take a look at Faraz Zahabi, for example. Never fought pro in the sport of MMA, but what has he done? He's trained one of the most prolific MMA fighters of all time in Georges St. Pierre, right? And yeah, man, brushing off him like, oh man, I don't want to train with him because he's not an MMA pro or whatever. That would be kind of silly, right? So we also make that same mistake when it comes to belts and ranks. Unfortunately, because BJJ is not MMA, Judo is not MMA. These are pieces of the puzzle. These are things that can certainly help. These are things that are valuable to cross-train in. But yeah, where do you stand, my friend? Let's get back to these questions. How do you compare yourself with other grapplers? For example, black belts. Roll with a black belt. Gonna circle back to that little piece of advice for you. Roll with some black belts. That'll tell you immediately where your grappling stands in their particular system, under their particular rules. And if you have a different set of rules, try rolling with them under yours. Alright guys, thank you for watching. Now get out there and train.
Hey fella, looks like you could use a rash guard. What for, you say? Well, they protect your skin against mat-borne illnesses, mat burn, and they make you look incredibly cool. But where do I get a rash guard from? Hey, have you heard of xmartial.com? Yeah? Then what are you waiting for? Check them out right now. xmartial.com has all kinds of rash guards, from sleek and simple, novelty, badass designs, and more. Channel your inner Japanese cartoon rat monster. Express your love for bad puns and kitty cats doing iconic jujitsu moves. Hey, that panda's gonna hit the other panda with a folding chair like a pro wrestler. And this one makes your right arm stand out. NoGiBJJGear.com is now xmartial.com, serving your needs beyond just no-gi Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Now, find brand new equipment for mixed martial arts, kickboxing, Muay Thai, wrestling, and more at xmartial.com. As always, use my code Ramsey10 for 10% off everything on the website. Once again, that's xmartial.com. Rash guards, spats, shorts, and more. Links and discount codes in the description below.